Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Al Rochelle, as always at this time, joined by the editor of the St. Petersburg Times, their political section, Adam Smith. Adam, good to see you. Introduce our guest today.
You too. Thanks. We have the president of the Lawton Chiles Foundation with us, Lawton Bud Chiles III. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me today.
Like your dad, you're doing a lot of walking across Florida these days. Tell what you've been doing.
I am. I'm actually about 185 miles into a 600-mile commitment. The idea behind my walk, a little different from his, is 1,000,000 steps. Trying to engage 1,000,000 people and making a difference on how we treat children in Florida, how we can fund better education, health care, and fix the juvenile justice system that's fallen to such a low level.
Give me a sense, how's the legislature, how's our leadership in the state doing in terms of its commitment to children?
In a word, horrible. I think if you look at almost any important indicator at the state level, and you compare it with not just the national average, but you compare it with Georgia or you compare it with Alabama, some of our sister states that are not as wealthy as states as we are, we're 47th, 48th, 49th. Graduation, higher education funding, premature deaths, across the board. After-school programs, we fund almost zero. Early learning programs, the quality of our programs. We have 1,000,000 children in Florida that are uninsured, have no insurance whatsoever. So, I mean, in a word, we're doing dismally.
Now, let's talk about the honest truth about what happened with the Lawton Chiles Endowment Fund. People would have thought, oh, well, that was there and nobody could touch it, but then all of a sudden the legislature is using it for funding purposes.
Yeah, and I think that sort of defies the whole idea of what a trust is. We said with the lottery that we were going to enhance education. And you see the signs, that we've spent $20 billion, but it hasn't enhanced education $1. All of that money that came in was backed out of general revenue and was replacement dollars, not enhancement dollars. Mm-hmm. And the same was with the endowment. When the Governor Bush at the time came to our family and said, we'd like to put your father's name with the fight that he won against tobacco, we'll take $2 billion of the $13 billion that he won in the settlement and put it into a fund perpetually for children, where the interest on the $2 billion, $100 million a year will go into children's programs forever. It was a great idea. We supported that. We had cloudy days in Florida. Governor Chris came to our family and said, we need to borrow some of this money, and we'll pay it back in a year. Didn't follow through on that promise, and in fact, a year later came in and just grabbed $700 million more out of that fund, which in effect decimated the fund.
Was that legal for them to do, though?
Well, it's legal in the sense that the legislature can change a law that they've passed by changing, even if they change it in the middle of the night, a statute without anybody knowing. Mm-hmm. Essentially, no one knew what or how. They assumed that this was going to be perpetual as it was set up. But they thought that about the lottery, and now we're hearing casino gambling is going to be the solution for education.
So Charlie Crist, you're saying, broke his promise to your mother?
Without a question.
Well, let me ask you about him. You watched Charlie Crist back when your father was in the governor's office. Charlie was often investigating this and that. He was really a serious adversary for Governor Chiles. How have you seen Crist evolve?
Well, it's interesting that Senator Crist was on the tobacco side, back in the tobacco fight, along with a lot of the other members of the legislature. So he sided with big tobacco, and he voted to repeal the law that my father had passed to be able to sue them effectively. So I don't know that he's, in that issue, changed very much. But I think the shocking thing about Governor Crist is just watching him go back and forth and really wondering what does he really believe in. Because he talks a good game for education, it makes me sick to my stomach for him to go around the state and say we're 10th in education, because it's just nonsense. And walk with me, Governor Crist, in Century, Florida, or Pensacola, or Okaloosa County. See the schools that are closed. See the public health system that's completely broken. And, tell us then that we're 10th in education.
But in all fairness, whether it's been a Democrat or Republican, and I'm thinking of way back to Bob Martinez, Bob Graham, whether it's a D or an R, we have not met our obligation, according to many people, to really fund education the way it should be funded. Lawmakers have not voted for it.
You're absolutely right. And that goes back to my father's time and even Governor Graham's time, who fought for education in the 80s. We have not supported K through 12 education particularly the way that we should. We got away with it because we were growing by a city the size of Tampa every year. Mm-hmm. So we could afford to not spend as much as we needed to make that investment. It's a critical investment. Unfortunately, recently, we're not growing by a city the size of Tampa. In fact, we've lost population in the last year. So these investments become so critical. the reality is, in the last 10 years, we were leading in many indicators 10 years ago on infant mortality, on pre-K programs, juvenile justice programs. We had high-quality, state-of-the-art, national-level programs. Now we're at the bottom of the barrel, and we've sunk to such a low level that what it's doing is it's creating it's tearing down the fabric in our communities. The teen crime level has gone up to such a degree. We have the highest teen incarceration rate, the highest aggressive teen crime rate of any state. And that's a direct result of our lack of investment at the front end.
Mm-hmm. So what are you hoping to accomplish when you're going around saying, bumming everybody out with these statistics? You think the legislature and the leadership suddenly going to turn around and say, you know, Bud's right, we need to start raising some taxes and increasing
No,
revenue?
I don't think they are. I don't think they are at all. I think our goal is to get the people involved. People have to get engaged again, and they're very cynical, and they should be, because the legislature serves powerful interests, not them. And so, and even so, it's vital that we hold hands together. That's why a million steps to get a million voices involved. Their most visceral, vital interests are their kids, their education, their health care, you know, the safety of their communities, and those interests are going down the river. And so, whether you're a senior citizen, or whether you're a young person, or whether you're a mom, we've all got to act together. We've got to get people re-engaged in their government.
You oftentimes hear the excuse, though, that's used, well, you know, we all have to live within our means, and education, just like everybody else, they have to do their fair share to live within their means.
Yeah, I know, and that's a lot of rhetoric, because the fact is, I consider myself a conservative person, so I don't want to see us spend our dollar on prison or remedial education or emergency rooms when we could be spending it for early childhood education to make sure that if a kid needs dental or if they get AHDD, let's screen them early, and let's make sure that, let's don't spend tens of thousands of dollars in the emergency room later, or $40,000 a year to lock them up. Mm-hmm. So it's conservative to spend it on the front end, less money. We're spending billions of dollars for failure.
So you looked at running for governor in 2006. There was a lot of talk about you running for chief financial officer this time around. What are your plans for political office?
I'm giving a lot of time to think about that. 185 miles on the road, I'm having to think about that. The honest truth to it is, I would love to see Alex Sink, and I would love to see Kendrick start to talk about the things that are really on the minds of Floridians. 500,000 people being foreclosed. 1 million people out of work, 1 million kids that don't have any health insurance. You know, the house is burning and nobody's yelling fire. And so it's very disappointing to me to watch this election cycle. I think what I'm doing is very important. I'm walking right now, I'm not running, but something's got to change. You know, this system that we've supported through the 527s and that we've allowed to happen is creating so much cynicism and so much mistrust in government that I think what I'm doing is very important, is trying to give people some hope that, hey, somebody cares. This guy's out walking 600 miles.
Well, it sounds like you're leaving the door open to run in this cycle for something.
Yeah, I'm definitely leaving the door open because, like I said, my hope would be that people get it at that level and they start talking about the things that are vital to Floridians. But it's a deep conviction that I have. I'm my father's son, and he cared deeply about average Floridians and their concerns, and he carried that with him, and I think I do too. And you get out there and you see how people are hurting, and you see that people are just kind of going about politics as usual now in these election cycles, and I don't think that's going to change things the way that Floridians need it to be changed.
The program is called worstofirst.org, worstofirst.org. Go to their website, get a lot of information. Bud Chiles, thank you for stopping by. We really appreciate it, and good luck to you.
Great to be with you. Thank you very much
Thanks
for the
a lot.
opportunity.